May I make a few comments first? One of the difficulties here has been to get clear the nature of the problem. We are not asking for a penny piece of community money for Britain. What we are asking is for a very large amount of our own money back, over and above what we contribute to the community, which is covered by our receipts from the community. Broadly speaking, for every £2 we contribute, we get £1 back. That leaves us with a net contribution of £1,000 million next year to the community and rising in the future. It's that £1,000 million on which we started to negotiate because we want the greater part back. But it's not asking the community for money, it is asking the community to have our own money back. And I've frequently said to them, look, we, as one of the poorer members of the community, cannot go on filling the coffers of the community. We're giving you notice that we just can't afford it. So that's the nature of the problem. I must say the other very big net contributors are Germany, and many of the others are either broad balance or very substantial beneficiaries. It's we and Germany who are big net contributors, and next year we would be the biggest of the lot, although one of the three poorest members. Now, the second point here, starting from that we wanted £1,000 million of our own money back. We could have settled at this particular European Council had we been prepared just to take away £350 million, because that was what was offered, provided one was prepared to say that that was the end of the story. Now, you would never have expected me to settle for 1/3 of a loaf, and indeed it would still have left Britain with much, much, much too big a net contribution, a contribution next year of the size of the German one, the same size as of the German one, and many, many, many times that of France. So, of course, I was not prepared to settle. Now, that left us in great difficulty for a time, and for a time it looked as if we weren't going to get any further at all. I expect Mr. Lynch will have told you that the £350 million for which we could have settled is on the contribution side. It would put down our contributions to the budget. The other problem is that we don't get very much back. And it seemed as if the rest of the Council was not prepared to turn its mind to the receipts side and expenditure which should come to Britain. Now, I'm afraid we discussed quite long and hard, and it was very, very obvious that some of the nations were very anxious to help, very anxious to help. Yesterday, one of the countries suggested that we might have a second council on this subject between councils, and that suggestion was made by one or two other countries. We then discussed whether it really would be a genuine negotiation, because there's not much point in having a second council or an early council unless it's going to be a genuine negotiation. And still, the small countries were some of the small countries, and one of the larger ones was very, very anxious that we should not just break or precipitate a crisis at this council, but we should find a way of going ahead. Now, most of this morning was taken up by very detailed discussions on that part of the communiqué which you have before you. You will see that it sets out that the contribution side could be a basis for a solution, but it goes on for trying to find a solution on the receipts side, which would give us a very much larger proportion of what we want. The question of when another council is called, to be an advance edition of the council which should have taken place in March, will be left to the new president of the council, and he will decide. So if I were asked to sum up, we couldn't possibly accept £350 million in full and final settlement of our claim. So the position has gone into suspense pending another council. I must tell you that I'm not over-optimistic about the results of that council, but didn't want to precipitate a crisis in view of our friends in the Council without genuinely trying to find a solution. So although not over-optimistic, although not having very much room for manoeuvre, indeed very little room for manoeuvre, we're going to try to have another Council to see if we can find a genuine compromise. Now, shall I take questions now? Yes? Well, one moment. No, the person behind you. Dear. Yes?
If you have been unable to get the other 8 heads of government to accept the justice of your demand for broad balance here at Dublin, how do you think you can achieve this at the next European Council?
Well, that's just exactly the question which I myself posed in the statement. Is it going to be a genuine negotiation? It's quite clear that there are a number of countries in there who are prepared to help, and some mentioned some figures. Now, therefore, some are prepared to help and go further. And so we can only go to a next council, standing by some of those who are trying to help us, and see if we can get a solution. As I said, I'm not over-optimistic, because the gap between 350 million and 1,000 million is a very, very big one. But they were very anxious we should not precipitate a crisis now, and were willing to help. And who am I to turn down offers of genuine help from genuine friends? It would have been a very nasty thing to do, not to have said, all right, one last chance.